Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Unstoppable podcast. I'm Diana Chen, your host, and I'm here today with my co host, Matthew Gold, co founder and CEO of Unstoppable Domains, and Mason Nystrom. Mason has done just fantastic work researching all sorts of topics in crypto and blockchain. He's got a special interest in Web 3.0, which I'm personally very interested in as well. He's even written an Advancing Web 3.0 manifesto, and he's got a weekly newsletter that goes out on that topic. So I'm really excited to talk to him more about this topic and why he is so passionate about it. Welcome, Mason. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Diana. Thanks, Matt. Happy to chat about Web3.
Awesome. So to start off, Mason, I'm just wondering, how did you get interested in crypto and blockchain in the first place?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't really have any quintessential rabbit hole moment or anything like that. I was doing my MBA in Hong Kong and started working for a cryptocurrency exchange out there called Gatecoin and just fell in love with crypto. And that was during 2017. And then subsequently made my way back to the States, joined Consensus as part of their marketing team where I helped a lot of our portfolio companies, and then made my way to Messari in June of this past year, in June of 2020, where I'm a research analyst and I specifically focus on Web3, NFTs, social tokens, and things of that nature.
For those who don't know, Consensus is a company founded by one of the founders of Ethereum, and it's been around, I guess, since 2015. Well, since when Ethereum launched, and they are actually in a lot of different companies in the space. They're like the big the big Goliath behind a lot of these small startups. And I don't even know how many companies they funded, but they have been just an absolute wonderful angel for the crypto community, helping to see, I would probably guess, hundreds of founders at this point in the blockchain space over the past couple of years. So for those who don't know, Consensus is one of the good guys in the crypto space pushing forward technology.
Definitely, yeah. You can think of them as a blockchain conglomerate. They have a venture arm, internal kind of studio that has funded a lot of infrastructure that makes Ethereum run, like MetaMask, Infura, Truffle, a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah, and I was going to say, even the path that you just described, Mason, is pretty interesting because you were actually originally working as a personal trainer, and then somehow that led you to go get your MBA in Hong Kong. Talk more about that, and how you got interested in crypto as you were getting your MBA, and then how another fun fact is you actually worked at Messari back in 2018 and before you were at Consensus, and then you went to Consensus and then came back. So talk about that whole journey, how you got into crypto when you were in Hong Kong, and then why you decided to come back to Messari after taking a couple years off.
Definitely. So yeah, I was a student at TCU. I worked as a personal trainer, kinesiology lab assistant, and was really focused on like strength and conditioning, performance enhancement, and decided that I didn't know if that field was going to be for me long term. And so I decided to continue schooling. Had an opportunity to go to Hong Kong to get my MBA, and wanted to really branch out and explore a lot of different things. And so one of those things I was kind of curious about was crypto and just Bitcoin in general. So I started working for a cryptocurrency exchange out there, and Messari, which was founded around that same time, started hiring community analysts to build out their like open asset pages, which is kind of this global registry of free open source information on a bunch of different crypto assets and protocols. And so I participated in that community for a couple months, and then found my way at Consensus. And having known a lot of the people at Messari when they were finally looking to hire someone to talk about Web3 and NFTs and just really expand their research coverage, I was like, this is a no-brainer, and hopped on the team and been loving it ever since.
Awesome. So how would you begin to explain Web3 to somebody who's new to the space?
Yeah, definitely. So I feel like in crypto we have all these terms that kind of end up being generalizations of trends. So while you have like DeFi is, decentralized finance, I look at Web3 as a trend of democratizing the internet. And so what that means in practicality is taking all the existing protocols and services, everything from, your internet service provider, which is like Comcast, AT&T, all the way up to, the applications you use on a daily basis, like Spotify, and building those on permissionless blockchains with open protocols and open standards. And so that's kind of like the general trend or thesis of Web3. And the scope of that is really large because it's the entire internet stack. And so that's everything from video transcoding to domain name services, which you guys are familiar with, and everything in between that.
So I guess that's a lot of things to tackle, and I know you recently just put out a well, you guys put out reports all the time. But if you were to say maybe this year, what's coming first? What are the first major challenges to adoption for Web3 that you think we're going to tackle, at least in the shorter term?
That's a great question. Yeah, this is definitely a multi-decadal trend. And so I kind of view us in the building out the infrastructure phase. And so that ends up being things that either developers use on a daily basis, APIs, looking at the fundamental ways that people interact with the internet tech stack, and building protocols that enable communities to own and operate those networks. So we can dive into some examples if you want, but
yeah, I'm actually curious how many. So you probably have a better count of this than anyone, but how many of these companies are you tracking? Because people out there, they have no idea. Like, my dad has no idea what's actually happening in Web3. So give us some numbers here. Like how many of these companies are there? How many people are actively working on this space? Is it tens of people, hundreds of people, thousands of people? I'm curious.
Yeah, it's definitely. It's dozens of protocols and assets, which accompanies, I would say, thousands, if not tens of thousands of individuals around the world. And even if you look at the domain namespace, there's various projects and protocols that are tackling that and trying to approach it from different ways. And you have that in file storage. You have that in really any type of protocol, internet service providers. Obviously, the ones that are hardware intensive have like less competitors, but yeah, it's a really exciting field to be in, and it's really just on the precipice of getting started.
One thing I'm wondering, Mason, is obviously our goal here is widespread adoption of crypto and of Web3. We want everybody to use it. What do you see as being some of the major challenges to that widespread adoption right now?
Yeah, so there's so many. And I think that anyone who works in crypto or even is an enthusiast probably recognizes that. I believe that convenience is a huge like feature that most individuals want. And so you don't get, our parents on board or any, less technical individual into this technology unless it's easy to use. And that encompasses a lot of different aspects, whether from just the underlying technology, whether it's like making Ethereum, faster and easier for people to use, reducing gas fees, making things like MetaMask more ubiquitous into like a user's like mobile experience. Crypto is a very desktop heavy experience right now, but the world is shifting to mobile, and so trying to ensure that everyone is able to use this technology is a big challenge.
Got it. And obviously, one of the things that you're most known for is your Advancing Web 3.0 manifesto. Everybody should go read that, but can you just sort of summarize it for people that haven't read it yet, and sort of talk about like what you include in your newsletter too? Like obviously, there's a lot of content in the space, but for somebody that is new to the space, they're sort of wondering, well, what else is there to know about it? So talk about like more of what are the different use cases, I guess, and applications that the general public might be interested in?
Definitely. So if we kind of step back and look at Web3 from an angle of how does this, like, why is this important? Why does this matter? I think it kind of comes down to a few key points. One is that the platforms of today have largely built their networks off of the backs of individuals. And that's pretty easy to see in any system, whether it's Spotify, they really leverage artists, whether it's like Medium, they leverage all these writers. And so those individual creators, whether it's content or some other field, don't really get the value that is being extracted from them. Another key principle of this is that as data is this really powerful force. And as a company gets more data, they're able to create more services and applications. That's why you see every tech company becoming a financial services company, just because the closer they can get to the wallet, the easier it is for them to monetize. And that centralization of data is really important because it's hard for any sort of innovation to happen because you, as a new startup, can't compete with these incumbents. And so making sure that that data is open and available for other applications and companies to utilize is important, and also making sure that that data isn't being abused, because I think we all understand that our data is valuable and that companies are abusing it. That's why you search on an incognito window before booking flights, because you just instinctively know that you're going to get charged more if you have prior search history of something. And then the last kind of key tenet that I look at of why Web3 matters is that we have these existing internet services that aren't being valued. So you have this concept of an internet treasure, and an internet treasure is a service of the internet that is used widely, beloved by all, but very poorly monetized. And so there's dozens that come to mind. I mean, Reddit, Stack Overflow are two. Wikipedia is probably like the quintessential example of these are, essentially community run protocols that provide a lot of value, but are not able to sustain themselves effectively because they can't monetize. And so by, using these primitives of crypto networks, tokens, these, non-fungible token standards, it opens up new monetization paths and ways that we can really create a more valuable internet for all the users and creators out there.
Yeah, and I know that's something that you've been researching a lot lately and you've been tweeting about and things is what this is all going to mean for content creators. And I think more and more we realize, that content is king. I mean, Bill Gates said that back in 1996, ages ago, but I think people are finally starting to realize that today, and even more so moving forward. And something that I found to be really interesting is you recently wrote about sort of the different eras of content as we've progressed. So can you talk a little bit more about that, like the history of content platforms and content creation up to today, and then where we're moving towards in the future? And then finally, your whole thing about crypto enabled content platforms, what that could potentially look like one day.
Definitely. So if you look at what the internet inherently did, is it made the ability to transfer information really easy and cheaply across the globe. Like that's like at its core what the internet did. It made information freely available. And so a lot of the first applications that came out from a consumer content perspective, whether it was like Medium or Pandora, were aggregators in the sense of they gave everyone a place where they could come create their content and that could be freely distributed. And that was a great deal, like in the beginning, because like that in itself was really challenging. But as the value shifted from, okay, there's so many other social networks, so many other ways that I can distribute my content, that value proposition of, oh, we're going to distribute your content for free, but we're going to take a lot of the monetization rights and capabilities became a raw deal. And so that's kind of the like first early era, the distribution era. And then as we get into like, I'd say the era we're kind of living in today is this subscription era where you have aggregators that predominantly take most of the value. And so that's things like Spotify or Substack. And, in the case of Spotify, you have very little value that goes to individual artists. Podcasts are a little different because there's just ways you can advertise on them, but still you're not kind of getting the bulk because Spotify just has that monopolization over your content and its distribution. And if you look at Substack in particular, it's an interesting comparison to like Medium from like the previous era, because the top Medium writer probably makes anywhere from like 8 to 30,000 a month, whereas like the top Substack writers earn millions of dollars. And so just that there's like a key display that your content is actually really valuable. And it's if you're able to monetize more effectively as like a writer or an artist creator, then you can really do a lot better. And that's kind of the landscape of today, and then we get into using these existing crypto protocols and primitives to really build out better content platforms.
Got it. So then, just to sort of dumb it down for users who aren't familiar with this yet, what will a crypto enabled content platform look like? Like for a content creator who's maybe putting out a lot of content on YouTube right now, or they're an Instagram influencer or something like that, like what will life on the blockchain look like for them?
How do they make money?
Definitely. Yeah, no, that's a great question, and really like the question that matters. And if you look at it from the perspective of where, like if we're in the subscription era, like where are creators not getting the full value today? And I think it was Danny Greenberg who had the quote that if I do a job for 30 minutes because I've spent like 30 years learning that craft, you're paying me for the years, not the like 30 minutes. And I think that really resonates with people because if you're an artist who is, working on whether it's like digital work or any other type of content, your early work is valuable, but you end up selling it at this massive discount to your future value because like as you build your brand and gain a name, like your previous work just becomes more valuable. And so what the kind of way that crypto fixes this is it allows you to ascribe a digital representation, like a non-fungible token, to say like that piece of digital art. And so if you're selling your art as an NFT, well, you can collect a royalty on that for the lifetime of that art, so that every time it's sold, you're getting a cut of that. And that is massively powerful when you're talking about how creators can really make money, especially off of their content. And a really key component of that is that not all content is the same value. And by that, I mean, it's kind of like just like in venture capital, where you have this power law where, your best blog post or your best song is going to outperform the other 99, then you have that same effect. And so you really want to be able to value your best content appropriately, which doesn't happen today either.
Well, I would just say I'm very interested. Like, I really like the Medium versus Substack comparison, and that's not even all the way there. And then I also agree about musicians, because if you have any musician friends in your life, they don't feel like they're getting paid enough by these streaming services. I am still unsure exactly how this is going to work out, but like you can see the difference in value there. Like you're saying, it's literally 100x between what you can make on one of these platforms and what you can make if you go direct to consumers. And like that's just so much opportunity there for technologists to seize on and like give back to content creators. So a little transition here. so I want to get back. I want to take back. So we're going to get back into NFTs in a minute here. But actually, before we do dive there, I'm actually tell us about Messari, and then why did Ryan Selkis start the company? What problem was he trying to solve? The genesis of the idea. Take us through so you see all these problems in the world. You go on to tell people about them so that we can solve them quicker. How are you guys doing that over there at Messari?
Yeah, definitely. So if you look at Messari, we're aiming to become the Bloomberg terminal for crypto. And so that means is we're providing data, research, and all types of other information on different crypto assets so that it's kind of a go-to place for investors, individuals, enthusiasts, anyone who cares about the quality of this information. And that whole thesis really was founded by Ryan Selkis during the ICO boom, where you had a plethora of just projects that were raising at pretty insane rounds. Some were like promising things that could not be promised. There was like a shortage of any sort of valuable information in terms of like, how does this token vest, or where can I get this information? And so that kind of initial like problem was a core reason why Ryan Selkis believed that there needed to be this open database where you could access this information, but also that there just needed to be a higher quality of information for the people who need it, especially if we end up having, as our thesis is, that a large percentage of the global systems are going to run on permissionless networks and permissionless blockchains, well, that information is going to be incredibly valuable.
So that last point there is key. So you actually just think that the number of companies in this space and the number of things to track is just going to explode. So my next question is like, who's using you guys right now? Who needs a Bloomberg of crypto? And then why do you think you're in a good position? Like, why does someone need a new Bloomberg of crypto? Why don't they just use Bloomberg? What is it that you guys are doing? What's the special sauce you guys got over there?
Yeah, I mean the first thing is traditional Bloomberg is going to cost you $25,000 per year for a terminal subscription, and it doesn't really cover crypto that well. Um, but like what the people who are kind of coming to us are either people who are already crypto native and professionals in the space, or large institutions who just need help keeping up with what's going on. So we have a couple products at Messari. One is like our basic uh, kind of subscription, which provides access to all of our metrics, data, information, research, API, and then we have another subscription, which is a tier above, which we just released called Messari Enterprise, and that comes with a whole suite uh, of upcoming products. One that is a real-time blockchain monitoring system that covers over 100 assets. And so we cover things like if there's a bug, a contract exploit, a governance proposal, and really anything that's like key or noteworthy that's happening on the assets, which is incredibly important because as someone who works full time in the space, like I can't keep track of everything. Like I can barely manage like my sector. And so for people who want access to like the entire world of crypto, there really isn't a better way to get that information than using Messari Enterprise.
So we're big on education here because we got a lot of first-time users. So if someone is out there and they just want to learn more, what would be some of the resources that you'd point them as a getting started point? Because like the one thing that I tell people is like there's always a place you can always go read about cryptocurrency. You don't have to just jump in and speculate because it's going to be touching every little piece of your life. So where can people go to get more education? And are you guys providing that service as part of advancing the whole Web3 movement?
Definitely. So a kind of like I said, a core early tenant was making certain information free and accessible. And so a lot of our, actually all our asset profiles are free and public. So you can, if you like want to Google an asset, whether it's Bitcoin, Ethereum, or something further down the long tail, we probably have a profile on it where you can read information. Or if we don't have like a full profile built out, you can get access to, the website, kind of the actual go-to places for that individual protocol or product. And then you can also access Messari.io for free. I mean, we have a lot of our initial price metrics, our a lot of our information is freely available. And then it's just our subscription comes with just added features for people who are more curious or want to get more in-depth information.
And I know this is a tough question to answer, but I think of all people, you're probably one of the best positioned to answer this because you've done so much research. But looking ahead to 2021 and then farther, let's say like the next 5-10 years, where do you see this space moving and evolving towards? And, can you maybe call out a few just exciting things that everybody can look forward to in the next year and then in the longer term?
Yeah, it's definitely a hard prediction to make. I think that we're still in a speculative phase of crypto, as with all things crypto, and so I really see NFTs having a kind of speculomania phase, and to an extent that has started, but I think will continue to grow over time, and at least in the short term, and then it'll kind of have its moment where it grows and balloons, and then maybe comes back down to some more rational expectations of what NFTs have value. In the long term, I really think that we want these world and global systems to run on permissionless blockchain networks, and so I don't know if we get there in a decade, to be honest, but if a portion of them are running, whether it's like using DeFi protocols or Web3 protocols, then I would consider that success. I believe that we're going to get to some sort of point where innovation will just become easier. And so once a lot of this infrastructure gets built out in the Web3 space over the next year to 2 years, I think that then it's going to really have its moment of massive growth.
Yeah, and then more specifically for Messari, can you share any new and exciting things that Messari has planned for this upcoming year?
Yeah, so Messari Enterprise, our new product, launched a couple weeks ago, and so that was a big goal we've been working on for a really long time. There's going to be a lot of new features that come out regarding Messari Enterprise that I can't talk about yet, but it will be well worth it when they finally go live.
So switching gears just a little bit again, wanted to talk about NFTs because we actually mentioned those briefly, and saw you tweeting about Chamath and NFTs not too long ago, right? But so we talk about NFTs a lot on this podcast. Blockchain domains or NFTs, art or NFTs, but what do you guys see over there? Because you guys are essentially an education and analyst company. What do you guys see are the different investment categories for NFTs? Just, I would love to hear your flavor on the space coming from maybe the investment angle.
Definitely. So if you look at NFTs just from like a what are they standard, it's really just a file format, just in the same way that a GIF or a JPEG is a file format in which you transfer value over the internet. And so there's the angle of looking at NFTs from like what they are. And so that would include, like domain names, maybe like digital art, metaverse assets, stuff like that, in-game items. And then there's really from the investment perspective, because like if you look at it like categorically of what do NFTs enable and what applications and protocols kind of come from that, I think you can get a couple different buckets. So you obviously have the individual NFTs and collectibles, which to a sense that's been the most successful or I guess the most prominent form of investment for a lot of people who enter the NFT space, because like they want to purchase domain names that they think are valuable, or they want to purchase art that they think is from a really cool artist. But the way in which an individual NFT or collectible becomes valuable is really hard to replicate. So like from an investment perspective, that's not necessarily like the best strategy unless you're like really, really in the weeds and know exactly what's going on. And then you kind of have these other buckets that I look at that are enabled by NFTs or that really empower NFTs to like really grow. One of that is social tokens, which is this kind of trend of creators, whether it's Twitch or YouTubers, writers issuing tokens that represent the kind of their underlying performance. And a lot of times, they're issuing NFTs that can represent access or badges or any sort of kind of value to the people who follow them. You have another bucket where you have NFTs that are used in like some sort of like governance marketplace. So like something like Rarible is a really good example of that, where you have an ERC20 token, just a Rarible Rari token that governs the NFT marketplace. And I'm really excited for how those evolve over time, just because marketplaces are, a tried and true business model. But I'm really looking forward to how those evolve into like massive protocols over time. And then obviously you have kind of the financialization of NFTs. So something like NFTX, where you take individual NFTs and try to make them more liquid, which is a huge problem in NFTs. And whoever solves that issue is going to be really successful. And then the last is just a bucket of like any other type of protocol or network that facilitates the use of NFTs. So that could be something like Audius that might eventually issue songs as NFTs, or it could be something like Engine, where it uses its ERC20 token to represent the value of all gaming assets that are built on their platform. And so those are kind of the investment buckets that I see.
Well, I'll throw another one in the protocol space: domains, because
domains, yeah,
because people are using these domain names to route all their payments. So, Mason, you actually yeah, go ahead.
Oh, go for it.
Oh, I was just going to say, you said a lot there, and I was actually taking notes here, so I'll go back through it for everybody at home. So we were talking about NFTs, and we have several prior episodes on NFTs. So if you're just tuning into this one, I would suggest go back and listen to those. And so Mason was actually talking about NFTs from an investment perspective, and he kind of broke it down into different categories. I'm going to list what I have here. You'll tell me how good my notes are. But there's basically
Definitely.
just straight up digital assets. And in that category would be something like art, which we've talked about a lot. And it's super interesting. I like that because it's fun. And it's just, kind of a new thing to have digital art. Who would have thought that was a thing? Then you mentioned another one. So that's just straight digital asset. And you have another one, which I liked how you said this, were social tokens that were kind of like enabled by NFTs. And what you were saying there is that you could have various artists or content creators creating a token for their community. And then this would allow them to do things inside of their community. Maybe it's membership or special perks or just some way to keep track of their community and also monetize it. And this kind of goes back to our early discussion about, artists not making enough money. And well, there's probably a lot of people out there who love their favorite artist on Spotify and would love to give that person, some support if they had an easier way to do it. So that was another one. And then you had NFTs as protocols, which you touched on in the end. And we were talking about domains, and there's a few others that got mentioned there as well. NFTs as governance. And this is basically using the tokens themselves as a way for people to make decisions. And you mentioned Rarible as there on there. And then lastly, financialization of NFTs, because crypto is really good at tracking assets generally, which means it's easier to lend against them or appraise them, right? And so I think we're going to see that as well. So that was a good category breakdown. I like that. Appreciate that, Mason.
Yeah, of course. And I think that as obviously it's impossible to predict what the eventual creations of NFTs are. One kind of interesting anecdote is that if you look at the S&P and how they value their assets versus physical assets versus intangible assets that would include intellectual property, domain name, stuff like that. In I think it was maybe the 70s, a large percentage of assets were physical assets, probably with in the 70 to 80% range. And then today in 2020, 90% of assets from the S&P 500 are intangible assets. And so NFTs are just a way to take these intangible assets and make them in a more effective mechanism where you can plug them into different protocols. You can add different permissioning rights around them. And so fundamentally, the shift is going to continue, and the new types of value that happen is going to be really interesting, because I would never have guessed that, Fortnite skins, which are essentially clothing in Fortnite that have no actual use in the game, is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And so there's a massive behavioral component to how we value things, and it's impossible to predict how that shifts over time. But that's just kind of a taste of this isn't some crazy new concept. It really depends on bringing existing intangible assets onto blockchains, and then also how consumer behavior just naturally evolves.
I like that comparison as well, because we have been in this weird half paper, half digital economy for about 60 years or something. And you're right. Disney, I would guess that, the large majority of their assets are all these media that they've made, right? And that's not like a factory or a truck or anything like that. It's purely digital. And what crypto technology allows us to do is take all these assets that are tracked poorly on paper and all these other different ways, and then put them in a way that's a lot easier to track, transfer, share, get revenue off of than you're saying. And thanks for that. I'm going to use that bit of knowledge there. 90% of assets now in the S&P are intangible. So for people who are asking what's the eventual size of the crypto market, how many assets could be there, we'll just point to the fact that 90% of the assets on the S&P are these, hybrid paper digital assets that need to be digitized, that are just running 50 years behind technology, and they move over. So this actually leads me to my next question, and it's a pretty good tee up. So there's a famous Vitalik quote during 2017 bull run cycle, and it's when Bitcoin went from 500 to 20K or whatever, and he was essentially saying,
have we earned what it is? So.
Yeah, exactly. This is the "have we earned it" tweet, right? And so I have to ask, when there was a huge run up, Vitalik was like, have we really earned it? And then so here we are again, 3-4 years later. It's a new investment cycle, and these happen, and it's because crypto markets chronically underinvested because investors don't understand the space. But here we are again. We have another investment cycle, and so do you think we've overextended again? We're here at Bitcoin at 50,000 this past week. Ethereum at 1,800, and I'm not talking about long run. Long run, we're all believers. This is multi-trillion-dollar asset class, and it's not a problem. But given the amount of investment that's needed every year, do we need $1 billion a year investment, $10 billion a year investment? Have we earned this current moment in the space, or are there some areas you think people should be more cautious in?
I think it's an interesting question from the perspective of like Ethereum, Bitcoin. I think like it's been earned. The amount of development and traction that has come for both those assets and protocols respectively has been enormous. From the context of maybe like some of the more emerging types of categories of crypto, whether that's Web3, whether that's NFTs, social tokens, I think it's slowly being earned. I think that we're still not at the point where we have like a go-to business model for a lot of these protocols yet. DeFi is relatively been earned, I think, and I think you can just see that because it's everything kind of has coalesced around similar models. Maker is now a 5-year-old company and supports billions of dollars in loans. So I'd say it's definitely been earned from DeFi as well, and I think we're getting there for the more emerging categories.
And then on an investment flows perspective, and you may not have an answer here, I'm actually just kind of curious, how much investment do you see being needed per year, like in the next couple of years? Because a lot of these companies are still pretty small. It's hard to hand a $100 million check to a team of 5, although sometimes investors do it. So are you guys following fund flows at all for investment in VC in this space or anything around those lines? What are you guys seeing? I'm sure the numbers are up and to the right. Just any commentary on that in general.
Yeah, I don't have any numbers offhand, but I mean, there's, as with every bull run, more investor appetite into crypto, which is good. I think that you could have said it was very under funds and in terms of like investing in crypto startups, pretty undersubscribed throughout 2018 to 2020.
Oh yeah, it was terrible.
I'd say in the back half of
it was as a company in the space, I was like, really guys, it was pretty bad 2018 2019 coming through.
Yeah, and part of that is we just had this over pendulum swing of euphoria to your protocol doesn't need a token, and like that just swung too far to the opposite extreme. And so I think we've come back to a medium of like, fundamentally, if you look at like these permissionless blockchain networks, like tokens enable them to be valuable. And so whether that's like an ERC like governance token or or NFTs, that is really what makes part of all this possible. And so I think that slowly you have larger investors that are getting into the space. And I think once Bitcoin really becomes cemented as, hey, this is digital gold, this is an easy asset that we can allocate to, you will start to really see a lot more inflows into the long tail of crypto.
Well, Mason, we covered a ton in this conversation about Web3, NFTs, social tokens. Let's just help the listeners out a little bit. If you were to summarize all of this, everything that we just talked about, into some key points that people should really take away from this conversation, what are maybe 1 or 2 of the key points that people should take away about Web3, about NFTs and social tokens? And also, what are some new and exciting things happening in the space that people should really be looking out for right now?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, from a Web3 perspective, I would say the general takeaway is that over the coming decades, we are going to drastically shape how we revalue these existing applications and services. And the way we're going to do that is by ensuring that the people who provide the value are getting rewarded. And so these protocols and services are going to be owned and operated by the collective rather than corporations and special interest groups. And from the NFT side, I think that, Bill Gates got it right. Content is king, and the NFTs are just kind of the next era of shifting all existing content into a programmable way that we can more effectively utilize. And consumer behavior is shifting, and there's no way to predict how that's going to evolve, but it's going to drastically alter how we interact and how we think of value.
Awesome. Thanks for doing that for our listeners. All right. So, yesterday I tweeted out that I was recording with you today, and we got a lot of excitement on Twitter. People sent in a lot of questions. We don't have time to go through all of them, but I do want to call out a couple of them for you to answer. The first one is actually from Zaji on our team. She wants to know the behind the scenes secrets. She says, Mason is one of my go-to research sources, but where does he gather research? Where does the researcher research?
It's a great question. I would say I spend too much time on Twitter, so I get a lot of information just from, that natural feed. And then I try to stay plugged into Discords, to different channels. And then I also try and reach out and talk to investors, founders in the space, to see what they're thinking of in building.
Awesome. And then another question from Twitter that I want to call out is, what is the best way to earn a yield on crypto assets that is secure, simple to use, and sustainable?
Ooh, I don't know if I have an answer for that. I mean, I think that it all depends on your risk appetite. There's a 1,000% yield if you want it out there, but I don't know if I would call it the safest of investments. I would say, as always, if you're investing in crypto, particularly if you're yield farming, don't invest anything you're not willing to lose. I would one note is definitely interact and play around with protocols. I think Pool Together the other day released their token and distributed to people who had contributed liquidity to their pool. So it pays to be a user.
All right. And then in the final segment of our podcast, we do this with every guest that comes on. This is called Explain Your Tweet. This is where I pull out some tweets that you made and that were maybe interesting or cryptic or funny, and give you a chance to explain them. I will say your Twitter is one of my go-to sources for learning about this space. So everybody listening, you should definitely go follow Mason. He's got really good stuff. It's just at Mason Nystrom. And but there was something funny that came up. It came up in one of the questions that we got on Twitter, and then I dug through your tweets and sort of found the source of where this question came from. But Jack from Messari asked, how many Girl Scout cookies do you have left? And so I was like, what is this? This is a random question. And I dug it up, and come to find out, you are not so much a fan of Thin Mints or tag-alongs. You're very particular about your Girl Scout cookies. So tell us more about that, because from my perspective, I mean, Thin Mints are by far the best out there, especially if you put them in your freezer.
Yes. So the long story short is I put out a tweet joking about the what Girl Scout cookies are best, and Samoas are obviously the correct answer for that question. But so and part of it was CMS, which is a fund in crypto, then retweeted that tweet and said that if I changed my name on Twitter to Mr. Thin Minty Mint, then he would buy everyone Girl Scout cookies, which I interpreted as, cool, I'll change my name and he's going to send a bunch of people, including myself, a box of Girl Scout cookies. And that was not the correct interpretation. The correct interpretation was I got a receipt for 860 boxes of Thin Mints being shipped to my place. And so I am gleefully awaiting the shipment of Thin Mints and pondering what to do with over 20,000 cookies.
Wow, you got played there. Well, Matt, I have to know, what's your favorite kind of Girl Scout cookie?
I'm a Samoa person, honestly. Yeah, I'm also.
Oh man.
Yeah, and
Respect.
I need to stay away from them. Just FYI, because the pandemic has completely destroyed my fitness routine here. So, and then yeah, we're trying to steer clear. But yeah, definitely Samoas. I also love Thin Mints, though. I'm not going to turn them down. And 866
only
boxes.
frozen. Only frozen.
Well, yeah. If you feel
exactly, you got to put them in your freezer.
If you feel overwhelmed, you can just forward them to Diana. She'll take them. I don't know what part of the
for sure. Gladly.
I'm
gladly. I'll send you my address.
Perfect. I'll be giving away as many boxes of cookies as possible.
I'm a taker, and listeners of this podcast, go ahead and tweet Mason if you want
box.
a box of Thin Mints. I'm sure.
Yeah, tweet at Mason for a free box of cookies. You have to pay for shipping. He'll do it. Well, Mason, it has been a pleasure getting to chat with you today and getting kind of a more of an investor's focus on the space, because I think that there's different frameworks for looking at this, and it was nice to kind of talk through how you guys are looking at it at Messari. So at the end here, how about go ahead, plug yourself? how can users use your products? What are the first things that you suggest for people to do if they're trying to learn more about space? And yeah, just give us the pitch.
Definitely. Check out Messari.io. We have a lot of great information. Most of it, which is free. And so we have explainer pieces on DeFi, Web3 that are free for anyone to access, as well as all of our asset pages. So great place to start and find information. And then feel free to reach out to me at Mason Nystrom on Twitter. Always happy to chat and talk with anyone who's building something interesting.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Mason, for being here. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. And we'll be back again soon with another episode of the Unstoppable Podcast.
Thanks, Diana. Thanks, Matt.